The desert was a cruel place, where silence roared louder than gunfire, and the sun punished every living thing beneath its weight, where even the wind carried the taste of dust and death. And on this day, 4 cowboys rode across that barren stretch of land, their horses weary, their lips cracked, their minds fixed only on reaching water before the desert took what little strength they had left, when suddenly one of them narrowed his eyes at a figure staggering across the horizon. At first they thought it was a mirage, nothing more than the heat rising off the sand. But as they drew closer, the truth hit them harder than the sun. It was a young woman, clothes torn, skin pale, eyes glazed with pain, her steps unsteady, one hand pressed to her stomach where blood had soaked through the fabric, dripping down and leaving a dark trail behind her, as though the desert itself were marking her path. She was dying yet refusing to fall, dragging herself forward with some unseen will, and the cowboys froze, exchanging uneasy looks because in a land like this, you didn't waste time or water on strangers. Survival made men selfish and hard. But among them was one man, Colton Hayes, broad-shouldered, quiet, his face worn by years of hardship, who could not look away. He saw her stumble, saw her collapse into the dirt, and something deep inside him, something that had not died even after the desert had taken his family and his land, stirred to life. He swung off his horse without a word, ignoring the curses and protests of the others who told him to leave her to fate, and he dropped to his knees beside her, lifting her head gently, tilting his canteen to her cracked lips. Some of the water, spilled but enough, reached her mouth for her to swallow weakly, her eyes flickering open, and with the faintest breath she whispered, "Don't leave me. Please." And those words struck Colton harder than any bullet, because he had heard them once before in another time, and failed to answer, but not today, not with her. So he gathered her fragile body into his arms, feeling her blood soak into his shirt, and he carried her toward the shade of a rocky outcrop while the other cowboys muttered about wasted time and certain death. Yet they followed at a distance, unable to tear their eyes away from the sight of a man who chose compassion in a land that demanded cruelty. And as Colton laid her down, pressing cloth to her wound to slow the bleeding, her trembling fingers clutched his sleeve, and she whispered again with desperate fear in her eyes, "They'll come back. They'll finish it." And in that moment, Colton understood whoever had done this was still out there, and by choosing to save her, he had already chosen his side. The side of danger, the side of honor, the side of a man who would not walk away. The night came swift and cold, stars sharp against the black sky, while the little fire Colton lit flickered like a fragile promise against the dark. The woman lay beside it, wrapped in his blanket, her face pale, but her breathing steadier. Now, though, the blood loss had drained her strength to a whisper, and Colton sat near, rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the horizon for movement, while the other cowboys sat apart, grumbling among themselves, one spitting into the dirt and saying she wasn't worth the risk, that saving her meant drawing the attention of whoever put that bullet in her. But Colton said nothing, his silence heavy as stone, because his mind was fixed on her survival. Hours passed before she stirred, her lips parting with words that came out like broken glass. Her name was Evelyn, she said, and she told him of the nightmare that brought her here, of how she had been riding with her brother across the desert, carrying hope of reaching a settlement where they could start a new life, only for riders masked in black to descend upon them like wolves. They had taken the horses, the supplies, and when her brother resisted, they had shot him dead before her eyes. She had run into the wasteland, clutching nothing but fear, until the gunfire cracked again and one bullet found her stomach. From there, she remembered little but pain and endless sun, until she saw Colton's face. Her voice broke as she whispered that he should have left her, that he was a fool for wasting water and risking death. But Colton leaned closer, his voice low and steady, telling her that leaving her would have been the true death, and that as long as he still drew breath, she was not alone. His words drew a single tear from her cracked eyes, the first tear she had allowed herself since the nightmare began. But just as hope began to flicker between them, the desert answered with the distant sound of hoofbeats, faint at first but growing louder, carrying the echo of riders closing in. And every man around the fire stiffened, their hands tightening on their guns. their faces pale with the knowledge that the men who had left her for dead were coming back to finish the job. Colton rose slowly, his silhouette tall against the firelight, his rifle steady in his hands, his heart calm now because the choice had already been made. He would fight not for reward, not for glory, but because she had asked for life and he had given it, and to betray that would mean betraying himself. So when the shadows of riders crested the dunes and the desert prepared to drink more blood, Colton Hayes stood unflinching, ready to carve defiance into the heart of the night. And friends, if you want to know how courage burns brighter than fear, how one act of compassion can spark a battle that changes everything, then make sure you subscribe to this channel, because the story of Colton and Evelyn has only just begun, and you will not want to miss what happens when the first shot is fired at dawn.